and welcome to Vibin with Tanya, where there are no limits to what we discuss.
So thank you so much for joining me, Tanya. I appreciate you coming to talk on Vibin with Tanya. I'm trying something different today, so you might hear some birds in the background. I'm tired of being in my house, so I'm on the back porch. But I'm really excited to talk to you. Because you are really doing your thing.
Thank you.
So for the listeners that don't know, you are a lawyer because you still are licensed to practice law in North Carolina, correct?
That's correct.
But you have taken your life in a whole different direction. And I don't know how to identify your business because you do more than blog, but you have a business called My Forking Life. And I guess the best thing to do is let you explain what it is.
Right. So my Forking Life is, well, it is a blog, but it's also what better understood as a website. So it is my business, and the way it primarily makes money is through the advertisements that display on the website. So the way I like to compare it to would be like a traditional magazine, like how an online magazine would make money, where people come to visit and advertisers pay to, advertise to the people that come to my site to visit. Mm-hmm. So that's the main way I monetize my business, or My Forking Life, the blog. And the other way I monetize is through product recommendations. Basically, if I use a product and I mentioned it on my website, if people click through to purchase that product, I then get somewhat like a commission based off of that product. Okay. So those are the main ways I monetize, but you're right. I also monetize through YouTube advertisements. And then if I decided to launch a product, that would be another way that I would monetize the business aspect of My Forking Life.
Okay. So what is My Forking Life about?
It's pretty much, I wish I had like a specific niche, but I actually just provide recipes. So recipes that I've tested and made for my family, things that we've enjoyed. I pretty much just give the recipe away for free. But the benefit of is that I've tested it, and, I'll tell you, what to do the correct way so you can avoid the mistakes I've made, and I'll properly tell you how to do it. So that's pretty much what it is. Just different quick recipes mostly. That we actually like, and that I think other people in the world would enjoy as well.
Obviously they do, because you've been able to give up the practice of law to do this full time. So clearly your recipes are working. So let me back up for a little bit. And can you tell the listeners how long you've been a lawyer?
I graduated law school in 2009 and started my career as an assistant public defender back in October of 2009.
Okay. And how long have you had My Forking Life?
I started My Forking Life in March of 2016.
2016?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And when you started My Forking Life, you were still working full time as a practicing attorney. Is that right?
That's correct. I actually started it just as a hobby. Did not even realize you could monetize a blog as a business. It was kind of just like, I need something to do. Work was kind of just work. And so I started out on like a free platform. I did purchase the domain name and built it from there. And about 3 months in, I realized that I could make some money off of it. So I started to transition the website to more of a business mindset. And that's when I kind of purchased hosting for it, built the website to appear the way I wanted it to appear, and then eventually was able to start to monetize it about a year and a half later.
Really? Wow. So it started as a hobby. So have you always had a passion for cooking, Tanya?
No, not at all. And I think that's what makes my story a little bit different than a lot of blogs you'll see. Like, a lot of people will grow up in the kitchen, been cooking all their entire life. That wasn't me. I was one of those kids where if my mom told me to come in the kitchen and learn something, I'd be like, nah, I have to study. My obsession, and I call it an obsession, started, I want to say it was about 2011. I think I I was dating he's not my husband, but I was dating at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was cooking, and foods were, I knew how to cook, but it was kind of just like, it was okay. It wasn't anything special, and he'd eat it, but it wasn't over the top. And so I actually was in a bookstore and found this book called How to Cook Everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the way that it just broke down, like, cooking is pretty easy. Like, it broke it down into simple steps, and then it kind of like taught you how to master the simple stuff and then expand upon it.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of just went full in, and I just got obsessed, and I just kept on purchasing cookbooks. I kept on cooking every day, trying different recipes, and now I have like 200 cookbooks. It's ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah, but I was one of those people that started later in life, but once I started, I wanted to know everything about how to make, good tasting food, and learning all the different elements of it.
So it became your passion as an adult,
Yes.
I guess you would say. So did you know growing up that you wanted to be a lawyer? Was that your passion, or did you just kind of fall into the practice of law?
I think I mostly fell into it. I mean, I kind of knew that was where I was heading, because I was one of those kids that was very argumentative with my parents, and they're like, you should be a lawyer. You just, so I was like, okay. And when I realized I was going to be a lawyer was when I was in undergrad. I did major in psychology, and I knew like once I graduated, I wasn't going to go into the workforce. But while I was in undergrad, I ended up doing like a death penalty practicum
Mm-hmm.
in that. And so then I was like, okay, maybe law school is like the next step. Went to central law. And from there, that's kind of where I really started to get more passionate about criminal law. Still didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. But once I graduated, I ended up getting a job at the PD's office. So criminal defense was
Okay.
what it was.
And that's in Mecklenburg County that you were working, right? Or
I
was
actually
it
worked at different PD's offices.
Okay.
I started at the PD's office in Asheville,
Mhm.
Buncombe County,
Mhm.
and then I went to Mecklenburg County. And then when I was in Mecklenburg County, I ended up getting employed by Gaston County, but I would still work in Mecklenburg County as the conflict attorney.
Okay. Cool. So do you ever miss practicing law?
Not at all. The only thing I will say I miss is like my coworkers, the DAs, the judges, like just the interaction, the clients too.
Uh-huh.
But I don't necessarily miss the actual like argumentative part of it. I don't
Right.
miss the word. I think I miss the people, but all the other stuff I
Uh-huh.
could miss out.
So running your own business, would you say it's less stressful than practicing law, or just as stressful, or stressful in a different way because you enjoy what you're doing so much now?
I think it's stressful in a different way. Only in the main way, I think it's a little bit different as far as stress. We know like law, the consequences are much more severe, right? Like
Right.
by mess up a case, especially when you're doing like felony work, it's like you mess up,
Mhm.
someone's actually losing their liberty.
Mhm.
I mess up, someone messes up my recipe, or I miss an ingredient. Like I can go back and fix it. I can change that.
Right.
It's a little bit harder to change things. So that's the different stressors. For running my own business, it's more of a personal struggle because I'm always wanting more and more and more. Like I want, in my head, I'm like, am I doing enough for my business? And I
Right.
beat myself up enough because I'm like, I only worked 4 hours today. Why didn't I spend 8 hours on my business? But then I have to like take a step back and be like, this is kind of what you wanted. You wanted to
Mhm.
build a business, but also create your own schedule.
Mm.
So the business part is just more of me meeting myself up, and that's the stressors. But I will have to give it to being a lawyer because you've got other people's lives in your hands. Like,
Right.
literally,
Right.
that's intense.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you began this passion when you were dating your now husband. And one of the questions I had was when you decided to transition from practicing law, steady employment, to pursuing this passion for your business, My Forking Life, did you get any resistance from, was he your husband at the time when you transitioned?
Yeah, so when I left my job, I left in April of 2019, and no, I didn't get any resistance. He's also a creative as well. Like he does movies and directing. Another reason why I didn't get any resistance, the blog was out earning the job. By the time I left, I was making double what I was making at the PD's office.
Wow.
So it was a business move where we were both
No
like,
brainer.
yeah. And it was also it was stressful on me because the fact that the business was growing and then I would still be going to work, it was, I could still do both, but just my passions were shifting and he could see it too. And I was getting stressed.
Right.
And at that point I was like, I'm leaving. And he's like, okay.
That's good. That's good. What about your family? Meaning like your parents or your aunts, uncles, and cousins? You know how we have that family when we say, oh, I'm thinking about not practicing law, you know, people, well, in my family, they're like, are you crazy? You know, why would you do that?
They still think I'm crazy. I got a lot of that too. And that was hard. It was not an easy transition. Like I literally lost sleep because even though my spouse supported me, you're right. Like parents and grandparents would be like, are you sure? You know, and I would even tell them like, yo, I'm making this amount of money. But for them, it was kind of like, yeah, is it stable? Or they still didn't care. Like for them, it was like, but it's not a 9 to 5. And I had to then start even though I don't have that many friends that are business owners, I had to start listening to podcasts. And I had to listen to other people that took the leap and just read their stories and say, you know what, this is actually not that odd. There are many people that are full-time business owners. So once I started to, you know, listening to those and kind of I realized like I just had to ignore them and just continue. Now, it's been a year. So now people understand like, oh, okay, like I'm not asking them for any money.
Right.
So
she must be doing okay.
And yeah, and even with like this whole, you know, the current situation we're in, people do check in. They're like, how's your business? Is it okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's an online business. It's great. Like we're good.
Right.
But so I think I'm going to occasionally get those questions, but now that I've been doing it for a year, people are like, oh, I guess she's fine. She did make a good decision and stuff like that.
Wow. So how has this period of social distancing affected your business? Has it affected it at all?
A little bit, yeah. So essentially, more people are cooking at home. So I did get an increase in traffic to the actual website. The way with any business, since my business is based majority off of advertisements, when the economy takes a hit, I take a hit too, because not that many businesses are pushing as much money into advertising. So I did see a little bit of a shift as far as a little bit of a dip in income. But with any business, like we were already preparing for it, like, you know, as far as making sure that we had enough money saved aside so that if a dip did come, we're still able to function. So it's good since it is an online business. The only difference for me is that since I do work from home already, I'm still working from home. However, my whole family's here. So as far as before, where I used to can spend like a whole day working on a recipe, that's kind of been
not happening.
Like an hour and a half where like, someone take this child or, you know, my children. But, so that's been the difference.
How many children do you have, Tanya?
I have 2. I have an 11-year-old and a 2-year-old.
So how is it juggling the hat of being a mom, being a wife, and being a business owner? Do you believe in the word balance? Because I don't think that exists.
I don't think it does either. And I've luckily, like I don't beat myself up too much. So, you know, it's hard to do everything. Like it's hard to, you know, make sure everything is done. I do drop the ball in a lot of areas. So right now, since the kids are home, I'm dropping the ball in my business. Like I'm not as consistent as I want to be. And I'm okay with that. You know, like that was the purpose of me making sure that I built something that I can control so I can do that. And you know, and then sometimes, you know, like breakfast, they're like, where's breakfast? I'm like, eat cereal. Like it's
right.
You're right. I can't be Betty Crocker all the time. So
I was curious, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Are you the one, like, whenever you have a family gathering, they're like, Tanya's gonna provide all the food?
Yeah. And that's one thing is like, I think, well, good thing is like I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that can cook. So everyone, when we have family gatherings, everyone's bringing a meal. But the other thing is like, I also make it clear that I'm not cooking like that. I'll say I'm bringing a dish. I love to bring a side, but I am not that person. And my husband knows it too. And people will say, oh, can you can Tanya make this for me? Tell Tanya to make this. And he'll be like, she's not going to do it. She doesn't.
No, not happening.
Yeah, no, I cook all the time. So whenever I get a break, I take
You
a break.
want it. Yeah.
So I'll go to other people's house and eat.
Do they ever try to encourage you to use their recipes on your channel or your website?
Sometimes, but I feel like people think I'm very critical, and I kind of am. So a lot of times people, like, if I go to someone's house, they're like, well, let's wait till Tanya tries. Like, what you think? What you think? And usually people like knock it out the park, but people don't really, I think people have a fear that other people won't like the recipes, so they don't necessarily ask me to put it on there.
Share it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can understand that, because no matter, and I realize this too, like, I have recipes that I will have hundreds of positive comments, and then there will always be like 4 people that are like, this is trash. I tried it, it's horrible. And so it's one of those things where it's just like, you know, I think that's where people get kind of scared to ask me, and I don't blame them, because sometimes I'm scared to put stuff up, because I'm like, I know someone's going to come.
Yeah. How do you deal with that criticism? You know, because of course, I guess as part of deciding to go into business for yourself, you have to accept there are going to be some people that just don't like what you're doing. So when you get that criticism, how do you deal with it so that you can stay on track?
It's hard. I will say, like, especially the first, because when I was smaller, when I was growing, I never got a negative comment. And then when that first negative comment came, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I doubted myself. I doubted my abilities. And so what I do, and I've kind of named it the Martha Stewart principle, because every time I get a negative comment, I will like go to like a Martha Stewart or some bigger bloggers, or not, she's not a blogger, but some big chefs or a Food Network recipe. I'll go to one of those, and then I'll look for it. And every single one of those will have a negative comment or two. And what it reminds me is that everybody gets them. Like, I am not the only one that gets negativity, but that doesn't mean that there aren't 100 of other people that are happy about what you do. So it's just like like my own thing, where I just have to look and realize, like, everyone, no matter how great you think that person is, we're all going to get a negative comment, and you got to keep it trucking. So that's kind of how I deal with it. And I think the PD's office honestly also helped me like deal with that, because we know how like some people, you know, judge us as a PDs and like, oh, you're not a real lawyer, da da da. And it's just like, even back then I would just have to ignore that, or I would just do a really good job, and then at the end they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, like, you actually really are good. I just keep trucking, and just keep, you know, making sure that I'm pushing out the best content that I can.
Yeah. Awesome. Have you ever had a time where you got a negative comment and you kind of wanted to walk away and say, is this really what I should be doing?
Yeah, like when I started. But now the benefit is that I get more positive than negative comments anyways. And then one thing is that there are also a lot of trolls in the world. So there will be people that will literally, and you could tell, like, I have people where I'll have a recipe and people are like, that's not how you do this, and da da da. And my first thought is like, you didn't even try it. So there are people that just are out there intentionally just trying to destroy you. And I acknowledge that they exist. And the good thing about owning my website is if someone leaves me a rude comment without, not an actual honest review, but just a troll comment, I could just delete it and move on with my life. So I do that. And then when I do get a negative comment, like if someone tried something and it didn't work out, then I look to the recipe and say, okay, did I, you know, describe this well enough? Did I put a note? Because that's also helpful. Like if someone tries something and it doesn't work, then it's like, maybe this person didn't understand this. So let me make sure I clear that up in the instruction.
Right.
So I think all of them have their benefit, but the trolls, I guess it just reminds me that there are unhappy people in the world, and I just have to learn how to ignore them.
Right. That's so true. That's so key. So tell the listeners what a typical day on My Forking Life is like for you before social distancing and before having your family home with you all the time. What is a typical day like for you?
Whew, that's hard, because so I'll give you two, because when I was working full time, and because essentially I started it as like a hobby, and then when I made the determination to treat it like a business, it was just one random day. I think I was mad at work, and I said, you know what, I'm going to treat this like a business so that I could earn enough so I could leave my job if I really wanted to. And so during that period, it really was like getting up early in the morning. That's when I would, like, probably around 5 o'clock, I would work on the blog post. I would also work during certain lunch breaks. So I'd go to work, then my lunch break, I'd go to a nearby hotel that had internet. I would also work on the computer as well. And I listened
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of podcasts during my commutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I learned about the whole building a business. I learned about Google SEO, so I could learn how to get people to discover my blog. And that was about 15 and 20 hours a week that I would dedicate to the blog. And I took pictures on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went full time, I kind of just, even though I created a schedule, I could not stick to it. It was very like sporadic. Some mornings I'd wake up and cook and post a recipe, and other days I would just be like, what am I supposed to do today? And I was still working about maybe 30 hours a week when I
Mm-hmm.
went full time, but there was no specific schedule. And then I started to realize, like, that's just the way I function. I'm better that way. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still able to, because what I would do is set deadlines. So it'd be like, all right, next week, Tuesday and Thursday, I need to make sure I post 2 recipes. And at least I did that. But the way the day functioned, it was all over the place.
Okay. Okay. So you set your specific deadlines and went with that.
Yeah, because I'm not a schedule person. I
Mm-hmm.
did
Mm-hmm.
try it. And then I realized, like, me trying to stick to a schedule just wasn't happening. I would just want to do other things. One another thing that I like to do is just like watch cooking shows and get inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't like to set up specific times to do that. I just kind of just did it.
Want
But
to
I
do
made
it.
sure, yeah. So some days I'd be like up to 2 a.m, of course, because I'm like, oh
Uh-huh.
crap, I have this deadline that I set. Let me get it done.
Uh-huh.
But it's been working for me.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned podcasts that you listen to. Do you still listen to podcasts to kind of keep you inspired and centered?
Once in a blue moon, not as much as I did when I was building, because at that time I needed the inspiration to quit
Right.
a job.
Right.
So
Right.
like I needed it at that time. Now I haven't been listening as often, but you're right. Anytime I'm feeling like down or I need like a new inspiration, I'll either get a podcast or an audiobook. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just purchased Essentialism.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I've heard a lot about. So like once in a blue moon, I'll do it, but not as often as I did when I was commuting to work.
Okay. So tell the listeners some of the podcasts that you went to for inspiration when you were doing the transition from practicing law full time to your business.
Whew, a lot. And it's been so long. Let me think. So I know there were a couple that I listened to for food blogging information specifically.
Mm-hmm.
One was called Dishes with Delicious. I think that's it. I was on that one too. Another one was called Chops.
Mm-hmm.
That's also particularly for just food bloggers, and you'll get information about how people built their food blogging business.
Okay.
Other ones I listened to, there was Nicole Walters podcast. I did listen to the beginning episodes because I know she had quit her corporate job to work on her business full time. So
Mm-hmm.
that was inspirational. And then there's another one for lawyers specifically. I forgot it. But
It's okay.
the Blogging Millionaire was one as well, because that
Mm-hmm.
was more of actionable steps to building a blog. And then there's another one. I do want to say this one because it did really help me take the leap in, the Happy Lawyer Project.
Okay.
So
I'll have to check that out. The
yeah,
Happy
that one,
Lawyer podcast. Okay.
yeah, the Happy Lawyer Project.
Okay.
And
Okay.
she, it's not like just about people quitting their jobs. It's about just different lawyers finding their happiness. And there was one in particular episode where there was a prior federal defender.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like we just had the same story where it's like she left the federal defender's office and it was kind of just like one day she realized like maybe I'd rather run my own business and
Mm-hmm.
just so like listening to stuff like that really helped make the transition a lot smoother, so I didn't feel like I was the only one or alone in this and that other people did it and they were perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So who would you say inspires you? Do you have anybody or any people that really inspire you?
I can't necessarily name anyone in particular. I know generally what I did realize when I was going through this is anyone that was a lawyer at one time and is doing something completely different did really always inspire me, because that was one of the things where, after I was practicing out, it was like 9 years when I left. And around that time, my former classmates, they were running for office, they were doing those things. And then like, I asked myself, I'm like, do I want to run to be a judge? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I had to then like realize like, what it was. So if I would be like reading a story and it'd be like, former lawyer does this, I would get it. I would be like, wow, that's awesome. That person is a lawyer. And then what's his name? The guy that runs TMZ, like he used to be a lawyer, like things like that. I'd be like, wow, like you can do something outside of the law.
Right.
And still, of course, you still recognize that you were a lawyer, even if you still have your license, but you're more than that. You can do something outside of just practicing law. Like that was for me always an inspiration, which is why I still tell people that I am a lawyer, because for them, I want them to know that I could be anything.
Right. So this is a good time for us to jump into random round, because you made me think of a name I want to throw out there for you. I tried to come up with some new names because I feel like I'm using the same names all the time, but this is one that I've used in the past. I'm curious to see if you've heard of this person. Annie Lawless. Have you heard of her?
Name sounds familiar, but I don't know why. I don't know if this is a law.
So the reason I use her a lot is she's the co-founder of Suja Juice, which is a cold press juicing company. But the reason I was so inspired by her is she went to law school, and after the first year was like, I don't want to do this, and just quit. And co-founded Suja Juice with her boyfriend at the time and made it a multi-million-dollar company, and transitioned from that and is now running Lawless Beauty Cosmetics. So she's pretty cool. I heard her speak on a podcast I was listening to, and I can't think of the name of it right now. So that's one name. Let me see. I've got some new names. Satchel Lee. This is a new one that I came across. Does that name ring a bell for you? So she is Spike Lee's daughter.
No.
She's about 25. And she started a podcast and is doing some things in film. And I just actually came across her the other night and was just really interested in her story and downloaded her podcast, but haven't started tuning in a lot yet. But that's why I threw that name out there. Here's one, Tanya Lewis-Lee.
No, I don't know. Is that Spike's wife? I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
Good guess. Yes. And so I hate to say it, this is going to sound so disrespectful. Like, I forgot she was a lawyer. And I was reading about her, and she is really into this whole idea of wellness, has started a vitamin line centered around wellness and seems to focus on that. So she's somebody that I'm watching now because I'm looking for, inspiration everywhere. And I just was really fascinated with the fact that she has transitioned. And I don't know that she's practiced law in a long time. So she was interesting. One more. Let's see. Who do I want to pick? Cleo Wade.
No.
So she's a poet that I came to know a couple of years ago, and I just like her a lot because she has that whole Zen personality, like one love, I love the world, I want to make sure everybody's happy. So check her out if you ever need something that's calming and inspirational, because she just has such a positive attitude when it comes to people connecting. And one of my things is, as women, I think that we need to do a better job of connecting with one another and supporting one another, as opposed to dogging each other out, for lack of a better term. So I really like her for that reason. Let me ask you this. Do you consider yourself to be a feminist?
I think so in
Okay.
general. And yeah, I'm just gonna respond with yes.
Okay. All right. And what does feminism mean to you?
I just feel like it's like you said, it's empowering women and just putting ourselves into better positions in society. Because I do feel like we are just a disenfranchised group, especially being as Black women. And I remember just in the legal profession dealing with a lot of just not feeling like I was on an equal playing field with other people
Mm-hmm.
as far as and one of the things that I used to feel bothered in the whole industry was just, like you said, not enough support,
Mm-hmm.
particularly from other women, or sometimes even from other Black women. There were other
Mm-hmm.
Black women that were supportive. There were some that weren't, and that used to like kill me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know this new field that I'm in, anytime, especially if there's a minority or whatever that comes and asks questions, I'm always there to help, because I know there are industries where there are people that are not willing
Mm-hmm.
to help.
Mm-hmm. So what do you say to the person that will come to you if they hear you say that and say, well, if you help them, that just creates competition for you and you don't need that?
There are so many people in the world, seriously, like we can all win. And that was the one thing, like even when I was starting the blog, and I realized one of the things that kind of made me go so hard is I looked and I did not see that many bloggers that looked like me, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew that it was an industry where it's a 6-7 figure, like individual owners were making 6 to 7 figures a year, some a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there needs to be more of us here. We could spread the love. So I don't feel like anyone is in direct competition with me, because there's just too many people out there to feel like we can't all have a piece of this pie, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's not only room for one
Right.
in like the digital advertising area.
Right. Okay. And for people that are wondering, or for women, talk about women that are wondering how they could be more supportive of one another, what advice would you give to them?
I mean, essentially, if someone reaches out to you, like be kind and respond, right? Like that's the one thing. And then um, just also like looking to see if anyone needs help. Like I've done that before too, where people have been like, oh, I'm interested in blogging. I will, give them the advice, or at least give them the resources that I have. Like I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how to do everything, because it
Right.
does take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of wanting to learn. And if you are hungry for it, like, and you have questions, I'm here to answer you. I'm here to tell you what I did to grow. Like there's really no secret. Like people think that there's some secret that I discovered on how to grow a blog. Like I just researched, did the information, and applied what I needed to apply to
Mm-hmm.
grow a blogging business. So
Go
I would just
ahead.
say,
I'm
like,
sorry.
just, give the information freely. Like, don't, because the fact is, if someone's really passionate to, they really want to do it, they're going to put in the work, and you should be proud. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
someone wants to work hard, like, admire it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And support
And I
them,
think,
right?
yeah, and I think there's something where I started to realize a lot of entrepreneurs, and you'll hear it on podcasts too, where you'll wonder why podcasters, people are giving away all this free information. A lot of it is seriously because they know, like, that's just how the world works. It's like you do these good things for other people, good things will happen to you. And
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
definitely need to do that.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's like you get it tenfold when you help somebody extend that olive branch, you definitely see it in return. So a quick business question, and I try not to get bogged down into business. Did you teach yourself SEO?
I did. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and it's not as difficult as people think it is, but essentially I really listened to podcasts, and I would pick
Mm-hmm.
up little tips, like little tidbits of what to
Mm-hmm.
do. And essentially for me, the overall SEO idea is just to really, really create content that say Google, because they're like the search engine,
Mm-hmm.
king and queen, whatever. You just create content to show them that you're an expert. So it's really about, I mean, the keyword stuff is part of it too, but the biggest thing is just like really create really good content and make sure you're making stuff that people are looking for. So
Okay.
that's one of the things where it's just like, I know what people are searching for. Those are the kind of recipes that I'm creating. And I'm making sure I'm an expert by giving you a lot of information and a lot of similar content.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I needed that information myself. So I really thank you. And I'm so appreciative of you coming to sit down and join me. I'm excited about your success. When I saw that you transitioned to doing it full time, I was like, bravo, hats off to you. So tell the listeners real quick how they can find your website and your YouTube channel.
So my website is myforkinglife.com. It's myforkinglife.com. And then I am on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter under the My Forking Life handle, as well as that's my YouTube channel as well, is My Forking Life.
And I think you just started doing TikTok, right?
I do have I suck at TikTok. I'm trying to do better at posting content. That's the one thing I'm not the best at social media because I focus so hard on like Google and search engine optimization. So I like TikTok because it's fun. But I'm just the worst sometimes at getting and staying consistent. But I like it.
I know I said I was gonna let you go, but I got one more quick question. How do you balance social media with actually running the business? Because it seems like if you're not on social media, you're not getting the attention that you need.
Yeah. So the benefit of, for one thing, I realized when I decided to take it seriously, or to run it like a business, I decided to just focus on what brings the biggest return on investment. So for me, social media isn't as big as running my business as like Google is. So I really focused on that. Social media, I kind of really just focus on 3 platforms at a time, which is why like TikTok hasn't gotten a lot of my effort. But for me, it's like Pinterest is big for me. What's the other one? Facebook is, but I have people that now help with those platforms.
Okay.
So I don't have to be on them all the time. And then Instagram. But yeah, one thing I realized is like, just focus on a few. That really helps me. And then once you get to a point where you can hire help, like for me, I hated doing Facebook stuff and Pinterest stuff. So I hired help
People
with
to
that.
help
So I don't have to worry. Yeah. So I think like in big companies do it. Like, you know, these companies, they're not running their own social media. They hire people for it. It's just, you kind of have to learn about it initially. But for me, I would just say, just focus on what brings you the biggest return on investment, master those. And then once you are able to, just hire out for it so that you can expand your business in other areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanya. I appreciate you. Looking forward to all the great things you're going to do. And I'll be reaching out to you for advice.
I'm here. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.